When they ask you what the best moment of your life was, everyone expects you to say your wedding day or the birth of your children. But for me, it was watching my husband's face drain of all color as a hotel security camera photo of him kissing another woman appeared on a 12-foot projection screen in front of 200 people. That moment when his eyes went wide and his mouth fell open in horror was worth every single one of the 33 years I'd wasted on him. Hi, everyone. My name is Linda Carter. I'm 62 years old, and I'm speaking to you from my new condo in San Diego, California, a place my soon-to-be ex-husband doesn't even know about yet. Before we dive into this story, I'd love to know where you're all watching from. Drop your city and state in the comments below. It helps me feel less alone in all of this, knowing there are other women out there who might understand what I went through. Now let me take you back to where this all began. It was March 15th, a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were my grocery shopping days, had been for 30 years. I developed a rhythm to my life, you see. Mondays were for laundry, Tuesdays for groceries, Wednesdays for my book club, Thursdays for volunteering at the library. My life was structured, predictable, and I'd thought that was exactly what I wanted. At 62, after raising 3 children and supporting my husband Richard through his entire career as an architect, I'd earned my peaceful routine. Richard was 65, just 3 months away from his retirement party. We'd been planning it for over a year. Or rather, I'd been planning it. That was always how things worked in our marriage. Richard designed beautiful buildings, brought home a good salary, and I made sure everything else ran smoothly. I organized our social calendar, maintained our home, raised our kids, and never once complained about the division of labor. That was the deal we'd made, the one I'd thought we were both happy with. But that Tuesday, my carefully constructed world started to crack. I'd forgotten my reusable shopping bags at home, something I never did. I was already at the store, halfway through my list, when I realized our house was only 10 minutes away, so I decided to run back. It was around 2 in the afternoon. Richard had said he'd be at the office all day working on the final details of the Morrison Center project, his last big design before retirement. I pulled into our driveway, grabbed my bags from the kitchen, and was about to leave when I heard Richard's voice coming from his home office. He was laughing, not his professional laugh, the one he used with clients or colleagues. This was different, softer, more intimate, the kind of laugh I hadn't heard from him in years. I stood in the hallway, frozen, listening to my husband flirt with someone on the phone. "I can't wait to see you tonight either," he was saying. "No, she's grocery shopping like she does every Tuesday. We have plenty of time." My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the canvas bags. I stood there in my own hallway, listening to my husband continue his conversation, each word feeling like a physical blow. "You're the only thing getting me through these last few months," Richard continued, his voice dripping with affection I barely recognized. "Once I retire, we'll have so much more time together, I promise." I'd been married to this man for 33 years. I knew every inflection in his voice, every expression on his face, and I knew with absolute certainty that I was listening to him talk to a woman he was in love with. The smart thing would have been to confront him right then, to walk into that office and demand answers. But something stopped me. Maybe it was shock, maybe it was fear, or maybe it was the 33 years of being the one who kept everything running smoothly, who never made waves, who always thought things through before acting. I quietly left the house, drove back to the grocery store, and finished my shopping in a daze. I couldn't tell you what I bought that day. My cart could have been full of cat food, and we didn't even have a cat. When Richard came home that evening at 6:30, right on schedule, I had dinner on the table. Pot roast, his favorite. He kissed my cheek the same way he had for decades and asked about my day. "Oh, the usual," I said, serving him green beans. "Groceries, some housework. Mrs. Henderson from book club called about tomorrow's meeting." "Sounds nice," he said, not even looking at me, scrolling through his phone. I watched him across the table and wondered how long this had been going on. How many times had he sat here, eating meals I'd prepared while texting her? How many Tuesday afternoons had he come home to our empty house to make phone calls to her? That night, after Richard fell asleep, I did something I'd never done before. I went through his phone. I know what some of you might be thinking, that it was an invasion of privacy, that I should have just asked him directly. But ladies, I'm 62 years old, and I've been married for over 3 decades. I knew that if I confronted him without proof, he'd deny everything. He'd make me feel crazy for even suggesting such a thing. I'd seen it happen to friends, to women in my book club who'd suspected affairs and been gaslit into thinking they were paranoid. So I needed evidence. His phone was locked, but I knew his passcode. It was our anniversary, October 10th. The irony wasn't lost on me. I sat in the bathroom with the door locked, my heart pounding so hard I thought I might have a heart attack right there on our marble floor. And then I opened his messages. Her name was Amber. She was 34 years old. I sat on that cold bathroom floor for 2 hours, reading through months of messages. My legs went numb, but I couldn't stop. I had to know everything. They'd met at a coffee shop near his office 8 months ago. She was a yoga instructor who worked at the studio across the street. He'd started taking morning classes, something he'd told me was for his back pain. I'd been so supportive, even bought him expensive yoga mats and breathable workout clothes. The messages were nauseating. He called her baby and my sunshine. He told her things he'd never said to me, not even when we were dating. He sent her good morning texts every single day, sometimes while lying in bed next to me. They met for lunch at least 3 times a week. They'd been on weekend trips together, trips he'd disguised as work conferences. But the worst part, the part that made me physically ill, was reading him complain about me. "She's so predictable," he'd written. "Everything has to be on a schedule. There's no spontaneity, no excitement anymore." "Don't worry," Amber had replied. "Soon you'll be retired and we can be together whenever we want." "I can't wait," Richard had responded. "Just a few more months of pretending." Pretending. Our entire marriage had become a performance to him. Every dinner, every conversation, every "I love you," all an act while he counted down the days until his retirement, when apparently he planned to what? Leave me? Continue the affair more openly? I took screenshots of everything, hundreds of them. I emailed them to myself from his phone, then deleted the sent message. My hands were steadier now. The shock was wearing off, replaced by something else, something cold and calculated that I'd never felt before. Over the next few days, I became someone I didn't recognize. I smiled at Richard over breakfast. I ironed his shirts. I listened to him talk about his retirement party plans with enthusiasm, and all the while, I was investigating. I went through our bank statements and found a credit card I didn't know existed. He'd been careful. The statements went to his office email. But he'd been careless, too. He'd used our joint account to transfer money to that secret card. $500 here, $800 there. Over 8 months, he'd funneled nearly $15,000 into funding his affair. The credit card statements were a roadmap of their relationship, expensive restaurants I'd never been to, a weekend at a luxury resort in Napa Valley during what was supposed to be a conference in Sacramento, jewelry from Tiffany's, lingerie from boutiques I'd never heard of, hotel rooms in San Diego, sometimes just for an afternoon. Every charge was a betrayal, every receipt a lie I'd believed. I printed everything. I created folders, organized by date. I was methodical, thorough. After all, I'd spent 33 years managing a household, raising children, keeping track of every detail of our lives. Those skills were finally going to serve me. Richard had no idea that the woman who packed his lunch every morning was building a case against him. I hired a private investigator. His name was Marcus Webb, a former police detective who'd been recommended by Janet, a woman from my book club whose husband had cheated on her 5 years earlier. Janet had kept it quiet, gotten divorced discreetly, and moved on. But when I called her, voice shaking, and asked if she knew anyone who could help, she didn't hesitate. "Document everything," she told me over coffee at her house, where Richard couldn't possibly see us. "These men think we're stupid because we're devoted. Prove him wrong." Marcus was worth every penny. Within 2 weeks, he'd photographed Richard and Amber together at restaurants, walking hand in hand at the beach, and, this was the one that made my stomach turn, kissing in the parking lot of her apartment building. He looked at her the way he used to look at me, back when we were young and everything was new. Marcus also discovered something Richard didn't know I'd found. He'd been looking at apartments for himself, one-bedroom places in the downtown area near Amber's yoga studio. He'd filled out applications, provided references, and was apparently planning to move out shortly after his retirement party. The retirement party. The event I'd been planning for over a year. I'd sent out 200 invitations to colleagues, friends, family members. I'd booked the ballroom at the Harborview Hotel, the fanciest venue in San Diego. I'd ordered flowers, arranged catering, hired a DJ. I'd even commissioned a custom cake with an edible image of the Morrison Center, his final project. And I'd been planning to give a speech, a loving tribute to my devoted husband of 33 years, thanking him for being such a wonderful partner and father. Richard would come home and tell me about his day at work, about the party planning happening at his office. They were putting together a slideshow of his career highlights. Meanwhile, I was putting together a different kind of slideshow. It was May now. The party was scheduled for June 20th. I had 5 weeks. At night, after Richard fell asleep, I'd work on my presentation. I'd organize photos chronologically. The first coffee date that Marcus had captured, the progression of their relationship, the hotel receipts, the bank statements. I'd create a timeline that anyone could follow. I'd even managed to get security footage from one of the hotels, showing them checking in together at 2 in the afternoon on a Wednesday, the day Richard had told me he was meeting with a difficult client. My daughter Sarah called one evening in mid-May. She's 31, a lawyer in Portland, and she wanted to discuss what she should wear to Dad's retirement party. "Mom, are you okay?" she asked. "You sound distracted." I almost told her right then. Almost broke down and confessed what her father had done, what I was planning. But I didn't. Because if I told Sarah, I'd have to tell Jonathan and Michael too, our other 2 children, and they'd try to talk me out of it. They'd say there were better ways to handle this, private ways, but I was done being private, done being quiet and understanding and accommodating. The party planning consumed my days. I had 2 separate presentations running on my laptop, the one Richard knew about, full of family photos and career milestones, and the one he'd never see coming. I worked with the hotel's AV department directly. I told them I wanted to surprise my husband with a special presentation, and that it needed to be kept absolutely confidential. I paid extra to have a dedicated technician who'd swap out the presentations at my signal. The young man, probably in his 20s, had no idea what he was helping me orchestrate. "This is so sweet," he said. "Surprise parties are the best." "Oh, it'll definitely be surprising," I replied. Richard was oblivious. That's what got me through those weeks, watching him lie to my face while having no idea what was coming. He'd come home with brochures for cruises he wanted us to take after retirement. "We could finally travel," he'd say, spreading glossy pamphlets across our kitchen table. "Greece, maybe, or a Mediterranean cruise. What do you think?" What did I think? I thought about Amber getting similar brochures. I thought about how he was probably planning these trips with her, not me. Maybe he was even planning to tell me after the retirement party. Maybe that was supposed to be his grand exit, celebrate his career, then announce he was leaving. Well, I was going to give him an exit he'd never forget. I confirmed every detail obsessively. The caterers, the florists, the photographer I'd hired to capture the evening. Yes, I wanted photographs. Documentation of what was about to unfold. The DJ had his playlist. I'd chosen Richard's favorite songs, the ones from our early years together. Unchained melody. At last, what a wonderful world. Every song a reminder of promises he'd broken. I'd sent personal invitations to Amber. Yes, you heard me right. Marcus had gotten me her address. I'd sent her an elegant invitation to Richard Carter's retirement celebration, with a handwritten note that said, "Richard would be so pleased if you could join us for this special evening. He speaks so highly of his yoga instructor." I didn't know if she'd come, but I hoped she would. 3 days before the party, I went dress shopping. Not to the department stores I usually frequented, but to a boutique in the Gaslamp Quarter, the kind of place I'd never shopped before. I bought a red dress, not maroon, not burgundy, but fire engine red. It was elegant, but bold, with a fitted bodice and a skirt that moved beautifully when I walked. I bought new shoes too, heels, which I rarely wore anymore. The saleswoman, probably in her 40s, smiled at me. "Special occasion?" "My husband's retirement party," I said. "He's a lucky man." I smiled back. "He has no idea." I bought new makeup too, had my hair done at a salon I'd never been to. I wanted to look good. Not for Richard. I was done caring what Richard thought. But for me. I wanted to walk into that ballroom feeling powerful, looking confident, ready for what I was about to do. The morning of June 20th, I woke up at 5 a.m. Richard was still asleep beside me, snoring softly, completely at peace. I wondered if he'd dreamed about Amber, if he'd woken up excited about seeing her, not knowing I'd invited her myself. I got out of bed quietly and made coffee. My hands were steady. I'd expected to be nervous, to second-guess myself, but I felt nothing but certainty. This was happening. After months of planning, after 33 years of being the supportive wife who never made waves, I was about to make a tsunami. I'd told Richard I needed to get to the hotel early to oversee the setup, which was true. He'd kiss me goodbye around 9, telling me he'd see me at the party at 6. Those 8 hours apart would be the last peaceful moments of his life. At the hotel, I supervised everything personally. The round tables with their ivory linens and centerpieces of white roses and eucalyptus. The stage where Richard would presumably give a speech thanking everyone. The bar area where cocktails would flow. And most importantly, the massive projection screen and the AV booth where my young technician waited with 2 USB drives. "Mrs. Carter," he said nervously, "you're sure you want to do this?" I'd had to tell him something when I'd given him the second presentation. Not everything, but enough that he understood what was about to happen. His eyes had gone wide as he'd scrolled through the slides. "I've never been more sure of anything," I told him. By 5 p.m., I was in the hotel's bridal suite. They'd given it to me as a courtesy for booking such a large event, getting ready. I did my makeup carefully, foundation to even out my skin, eyeliner to make my blue eyes stand out, lipstick in a shade called Revenge Red. I put on my dress, my heels. I looked at myself in the full-length mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked strong, determined, beautiful. At 5:30, guests started arriving. I greeted them in the ballroom foyer with a smile. Richard's colleagues from the firm, our neighbors, friends we'd had for decades. Richard's sister, Patricia, flew in from Boston, my brother Tom from Seattle. Our children, Sarah, Jonathan, and Michael, arrived together, their spouses, and my 4 grandchildren in tow. "Mom, you look amazing," Sarah said, hugging me. "Is that a new dress?" "It is," I said. Felt like a special occasion. Richard arrived at 6 on the dot, looking handsome in his navy suit. He saw me across the room and his eyes widened slightly. He wasn't used to seeing me like this. For a moment, just a moment, I saw something in his face. Maybe regret, maybe desire, maybe just surprise that his predictable wife had shown up in a red dress. He walked over and kissed my cheek. "You look beautiful," he said. "Thank you," I replied. "This is going to be a night no one will ever forget." He smiled, having no idea how right I was. At 6:15, Amber walked in. I saw her before Richard did. She was wearing a black cocktail dress, her blonde hair falling in waves past her shoulders. She looked young and nervous, scanning the crowd. When her eyes found me standing near the entrance, something flickered across her face. Confusion, maybe a hint of recognition from the photos she'd probably seen in Richard's phone. I walked directly to her. "Amber," I said warmly, extending my hand. "I'm so glad you could make it. I'm Linda, Richard's wife." The color drained from her face. Her hand was cold and limp in mine. "Mrs. Carter," she stammered, I didn't realize—" "That I knew?" I smiled. "Oh, honey, I know everything, but please enjoy the party. There's an open bar, excellent food, and the slideshow is going to be absolutely spectacular." I walked away before she could respond, leaving her frozen by the entrance. I could feel her eyes on my back as I made my way through the crowd, greeting guests, laughing at jokes, playing the perfect hostess. Richard found me near the bar. "Did I just see Amber from the yoga studio?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "Oh yes, I invited her," I said brightly. "You talk about your morning classes so much. I thought it would be nice for her to see how appreciated you are. Was that okay?" He opened his mouth, closed it, then forced a smile. "Of course. That was thoughtful." I could see him sweating, see his eyes darting between me and Amber, who was now standing alone near the back of the room, looking like she wanted to disappear. He couldn't figure out what was happening, if I knew or didn't know, if this was innocent or a trap. Good. Let him sweat. Dinner was served at 7. Filet mignon or grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, and a risotto that cost $40 a plate. I sat at the head table next to Richard, our children and their families surrounding us. Richard barely touched his food. He kept checking his phone under the table, probably texting Amber, trying to figure out what to do. I ate every bite of my dinner. It was delicious. At 8 o'clock, Richard's senior partner, Douglas Hamilton, stood up to make a toast. He talked about Richard's 35-year career, his brilliant designs, his dedication to the firm. Everyone applauded. Richard stood up, acknowledging the praise, still looking uncomfortable but trying to hide it. Then Douglas announced it was time for the slideshow. "Linda has put together a beautiful presentation celebrating Richard's life and career," Douglas said. "So if everyone could direct their attention to the screen." The lights dimmed. The massive projection screen lit up, and my slideshow began. The first few slides were normal. Richard, as a young architect, early photos of his buildings, pictures of our wedding, day, our children as babies, family vacations, career milestones. Richard started to relax. This was what he'd expected, a traditional, sentimental tribute. Then, right at the moment when everyone was comfortable and settled, right after a photo of our 25th anniversary, the slide changed, and there was Amber. The photograph was from March 18th, 3 days after I'd overheard Richard's phone call. It showed Richard and Amber sitting at an outdoor cafe, holding hands across the table. The timestamp was visible in the corner, 1:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. The caption at the bottom read, "While Linda was grocery shopping." The room went absolutely silent. Richard's head snapped toward the screen. I heard him make a sound, a strangled gasp. Next to me, my daughter Sarah grabbed my arm. "Mom," she whispered, but I kept my eyes forward, watching the presentation unfold. The next slide was a screenshot of a text message, Richard's words to Amber. "I can't wait until I retire, and we can finally be together properly. Just a few more months of pretending." Someone in the crowd gasped. I heard chairs scraping, whispers starting. But the slideshow continued. Photo after photo. Richard and Amber at restaurants, at the beach, outside her apartment, and then the hotel security footage. A video clip showing them checking into the seaside resort at 2:13 p.m., leaving at 5:47 p.m. The same day, Richard had told me he was in back-to-back meetings. The credit card statements appeared next, enlarged so everyone could read every charge. The Tiffany's purchase for $2,800, the lingerie boutique, the weekend in Napa Valley. And next to each charge, I'd place screenshots of Richard's calendar, showing what he'd told me he was doing that day. March 14th, client dinner. Actual charge, romantic restaurant, $200. April 3rd, Sacramento conference, actual location, Napa Valley Resort, $800. May 15th, Working late. Actual charge, hotel room, $350. The transfer statements came next. $15,000 funneled from our joint account to a secret credit card over 8 months. Money we'd saved for retirement. Money I'd thought was for both of us. Richard stood up so fast his chair fell backward. "Turn it off," he shouted. "Turn it off right now." But I'd planned for this. I looked at him calmly and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Why, honey, I thought everyone would want to see how you've been spending your time. And our money." The slideshow continued. More messages. "She's so predictable, so boring. I can't wait to start my real life with you." Words he'd written about me, about our marriage, about the life we'd built together. I want you to pause here and hit that subscribe button, because women like us, women who've been betrayed and underestimated, we need to stick together. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and let's support each other through these stories. The room had erupted into chaos now. People were standing, phones out, some recording, others trying to process what they were seeing. Richard's colleagues looked horrified. His sister Patricia was crying. My brother Tom had moved to stand behind my chair, his hands on my shoulders. But the best part, the absolute best part, was watching Amber. She'd been trying to edge toward the exit, but now people had noticed her, recognized her from the photos. Women were pointing, whispering, and she was trapped. Richard was yelling at the AV booth, but my technician had locked the door. "You're insane!" Richard screamed at me across the table. His face was purple, veins bulging in his neck. "You've humiliated me in front of everyone." I stood up, my red dress catching the light from the projection screen. My voice was calm, steady, amplified by the microphone that Douglas had left on the table from his earlier toast. "No, Richard," I said clearly. "You humiliated yourself. I just made sure everyone knew about it." The final slides were appearing now. Property listings for one-bedroom apartments. Applications Richard had filled out, planning to move in with Amber after his retirement. An email to a divorce attorney inquiring about the process dated 2 weeks earlier. He'd been planning to leave me. He just hadn't wanted to do it before his big party, before he got all the praise and glory for his successful career. The last slide was a photograph of our wedding day. Young Linda and young Richard smiling at the camera, full of hope and promise. The caption read, 33 years. That's how long I believed in us. Then the screen went black. The lights came back on and 200 people were staring at us. At me in my red dress, standing tall. At Richard looking like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. At Amber, pressed against the wall near the back, tears streaming down her face. Sarah was standing now too, her arm around me. "Mom," she said, her voice shaking with emotion. Then she turned to her father. "How could you?" Jonathan and Michael had moved to my other side. My sons, flanking me, their faces hard as they looked at their father. My grandchildren were being ushered out by their other parents, confused about what was happening, but sensing something terrible had occurred. Richard's colleagues were gathering their things, leaving quickly, some pausing to squeeze my hand or whisper words of support. His senior partner Douglas looked devastated, not for Richard, but for me. "Linda," he said quietly, "if you need anything." "I have a very good lawyer," I replied, "but thank you." Richard tried to approach me, reaching for my arm. "Linda, we need to talk about this privately." "Privately?" I pulled away from him. "You wanted privacy while you were cheating, but now? Now everyone knows exactly who you are." Tom stepped between us. "I think you should leave, Richard. This is my party." "No," I said firmly. "This was supposed to be your party. Now it's just the day everyone learned the truth. You should go. And I suggest Amber goes with you, since you two are so eager to start your real life together." All eyes turned to Amber. She was sobbing now, mascara running down her face, and I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered all those text messages, how she'd called me boring, how she'd participated in mocking the woman whose husband she was stealing. You deserve each other, I said to both of them. Richard grabbed his jacket and stormed out. Amber followed him, head down, rushing past the crowd of judgmental faces. After they left, the ballroom remained full. Not because people wanted to celebrate anymore, but because they wanted to support me. Women I'd known for decades hugged me, some crying, telling me I was brave. Some shared their own stories of betrayal, whispered in my ear like secrets they'd been holding on to. The hotel staff, bless them, kept the bar open. Someone started the music again, and slowly, incredibly, the evening transformed into something else entirely. Not a retirement party, a liberation party. My children stayed close. Sarah held my hand. Jonathan kept asking if I was okay. Michael, my youngest, said, "Mom, that was the most badass thing I've ever seen." "Language," I said automatically, and we all laughed. It felt good to laugh. Douglas Hamilton approached me again. "Linda, I want you to know, the firm will be conducting an internal review of Richard's expense accounts. If he used company funds inappropriately—" "He has his own accounting to do with you," I said. "My lawyer will be in touch about the personal funds." Because yes, I had a lawyer, had retained her 3 months ago. All the evidence was already documented, organized, ready for divorce proceedings. The retirement accounts we'd built together, the house we'd lived in for 28 years, the savings we'd accumulated. I was going to fight for every penny I was entitled to. I filed for divorce the following Monday. Richard tried to call me 83 times that first week. I blocked his number. He showed up at the house once. I had the locks changed and threatened to call the police for trespassing. He sent emails that ranged from apologetic to angry to pleading. I forwarded them all to my lawyer. The divorce took 8 months to finalize. I got the house, half his retirement accounts, and half the equity in his portion of the architectural firm. The judge was not sympathetic to Richard's case, especially after my lawyer presented all those credit card statements showing him spending marital funds on his affair. Richard and Amber broke up 3 months after the party. Apparently, when the affair had to become a real relationship, when there was no more sneaking around or excitement, it fell apart. I heard through mutual friends that she left him for someone closer to her own age. I sold the house. Too many memories, too. Many lies contained in those walls. I bought my condo in the gas lamp quarter, the trendy part of downtown San Diego. I'm learning to live alone, to make decisions based only on what I want, not what someone else needs. My children visit often. My grandchildren stay overnight. I joined a new book club, made new friends. I started taking painting classes. I travel now, Greece, like Richard had suggested. But I went by myself, and it was glorious. I'm 63 now, and I'm just beginning to understand who Linda Carter actually is when she's not being Richard's wife. Was it messy? Absolutely. Would I do it again? Every single time. Some betrayals don't deserve private dignity. Sometimes the world needs to see the truth.